CIRF number 460 is on deck, and this is for the week of July 10th through the 16th, 2025. There's not a lot going on, but what is going on is pretty big. That's huge. Full moon in Capricorn unlocks the Cancer Capricorn continuum. We have Saturn going station, and what that means for the Neptune and Saturn conjunction. We'll talk about that in terms of like what's happening now versus long term. And then we have the mini grand trine. Very, very transformative. There we go. Where do we begin? Let's see. Let's do this. Just real quick. Here's what we're going to talk about. We have a sun in Cancer still, and that will be good until into next CIRF report. We have a full moon in Capricorn, as I mentioned. In the backdrop, we have like the mini grand trine we've been talking about. So if you've seen any of the past CIRFs, it's pretty much the same, and that's going to be a broken record for a while. But new this week, station for Saturn goes station in retrograde. And then we have the Saturn parallel Neptune, so that intensifies. And by the way, all that is the same thing because Saturn and Neptune are in the mini grand trine, as you know. And this puts us on careful affection. According to the I-Ching 54, it means because of this caring but unpredictable nature of a full moon, and then this big transformative undertow thing. It's not this big obvious energy that you can definitely feel. It's this underneath, this undertow thing that is energetically transformative. So those things kind of put us on edge, and we kind of just feel like I need to be careful, right? So that's what we're going to discuss. Now, this recording is going out early, and so early that I don't have any comments yet because there's not the previous video. And so that'll be TBD, probably on the DreamBot report. But that's because we're going to be out of town on the weekend that I normally prepare for these reports, so I'm doing it early. But it's still all valid. Here's our eclipse chart. We are going to see the full moon in Capricorn and then proceed towards the new moon in Leo next, but not in this CIRF week. It's this is kind of eye-opening here. In this chart, we're looking in between these vertical lines, and there really just isn't a lot of alignments. All we see is this full moon that placed here with the sun in Cancer. And then the big bold alignments are coming in with the Saturn and the Neptune, the Pluto. This is the mini grand trine. And it's just going to be rock solid for a long time. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Just so you know, Saturn and Neptune, just put this in the back of your mind, it goes exact on February 20th, 2026 at 0 degrees Aries 45 minutes. And I'm going to explain that a little bit later, but I just didn't want to miss this. I keep on missing, hey, when do these things go exact? Because they're going to be dancing with, both of them have, by this CIRF week, both of them will be retrograde, and then they're going to retreat back into Pisces. And then eventually get into a perfect conjunction, but they're like going to be conjunct throughout this whole ordeal. So it's a long dance, and it's about moving towards the ideal disciplined self in Aries, even though there's a stint in Pisces. All right, energetically, what do we have? Well, we have the full moon. That's obvious, huge. And then perhaps maybe a little lower, but it's just it's big, but it doesn't compete with the obviousness of the full moon. So it's the mini grand trine is this red arrow. And you imagine a little bit of a hump maybe developing on Friday as Saturn stations. And that just gives the Saturn influence a little bit more, but not by much. These are all slower planets, so keep that in mind. All right, full moon, Thursday the 10th. Here it is, 3:36 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And there's not a lot happening. We could perhaps say avoid in fact, but technically the full moon is in an aspect to the sun. So what we can say is, other than the full moon and the sun arrangement on this continuum, there isn't a lot hanging on to the sun. This is a 5-degree orb here on this trine, so but basically it's a free and clear full moon. That's the point. It doesn't have any finaglings or attachments, and the one attachment it does have with Mars is it's waning out, and it's 4 or 5 degrees. All right, so the full moon, culmination and manifestation of goals and ambitions, because we're talking about the Capricorn archetype. We have some unpredictability with the full moon, just the full moon itself. And the full moon in Capricorn means unpredictability and maybe some career type things, or the goals and ambitions that you have identified, or maybe more of a yearning to suddenly have some of these aspirations, and maybe you get insights about what would be really good for your your self-care, or your career, or work or job. But also, as Saturn rules this Capricorn, we're talking about emotional moon, emotional maturity, Saturn, and self-discipline. It just so happens that Saturn right now is going direct, will go station within this 24-hour full moon period. So the ruler will go station pretty close to the full moon. Anyway, that combination brings on a desire for feeling accomplishment and pride. We have a variety of emotions that steer us towards determination and more perseverance, non-stagnancy. If you're not moving in alignment with this, it'll probably feel like a stronger and stronger should, and you won't be able to just like, yeah, I should do that thing, but just sort of let it drift off. It will always just keep pestering you until you just get it done. But imagine the goat climbing a mountain, and we're getting to mountain peaks. We're climbing higher. We're yearning. We're looking around for the next peak. We're not satisfied with just getting to this little vista here. If there's more to climb, that Capricorn wants to climb it. And why? Well, it's because that's just what goats do. And so you put some unpredictability around that, and you might be surprised at the vistas that you do see once you open your mind to it. And this Capricorn full moon will allow you to see possibly some new goals, new aspirations that you didn't know were meaningful to you. Another thing that you can do here that we'll talk about in our solutions is to, Capricorn has got like a different kind of fear. There might be a fear of failure. They're kind of fueled by fear. And so just because you no longer need to have the fear to motivate you, as the Capricorn, and you can pick a peak, pick a goal, pick an aspiration, and really just go for it without the fear. And so you combine this, a really neat full moon, because you can combine this into a ritual to where all the maybe the quote unquote motivations that you've used in the past, probably more like fear-based, or superstitious, or something like that. You can release those at the full moon. Full moon is a great time to surrender those or sacrifice something meaningful. And in the world of Capricorn, it's that fear that can really self-sabotage the whole accomplishment process, or the climbing process, or the getting to the next layer process. So at the full moon, consider writing down your fears, maybe burning those, and you want to look for lifelong fears that are at the core of your being, that you keep coming back to, keep trying to resolve. fear of abandonment, or fear of not being worth anything, or fear of not being lovable, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a Capricorn career thing, just any fear, because Capricorns just tend to be a little more, motivated by fear. So we can just be motivated by, because this is important to me. That's why I'm doing this, not because I'm afraid of something else or afraid of abandonment. I'm loving this person because I want to, not because I want to prevent from being abandoned. You see the difference there? So give up the fear and then stay motivated. All right, Friday the 11th, we see this strong band of trines. That's easy energy from our Gemini, our fresh Uranus and Venus in Gemini, and the Capricorn and Aquarius, Moon and Pluto. But that spells out that one side of the mini grand trine. So here we are again. And the mini grand trine is the collective liberator, but this point here, this leg here, the sextile, it's a massive sextile, very emotional, especially once the moon goes into Aquarius and hits Pluto. You're going to have this point here. Typically, this point of the mini grand trine is typically ruled by Pluto, but it's going to be a lot more emotional towards rebellious transformation, control, but all things Aquarian, opportunistically bringing out the best in us. Well, not outright not making us better, but showing us. So Neptune is showing us dreams, it's fantasy, but the ideal form of us. And Saturn brings in a form of maybe challenging, but maybe self-discipline. So do we have, if you so choose, do you agree that you can use this energy to choose to be better? This is the energy for it, because you'll be able to be shown what your better form is, or maybe deconditioned form. The true you, the ideal you, is probably the most deconditioned form of who you are, if that makes sense, because we've been conditioned so long. The ideal form would not be to be stronger, more funny, better looking, physique, lose weight, yada, yada. The better form is deconditioning your ego, deconditioning your inner child, and being the true you. That is the most ideal version. Now, Saturn and Neptune can show you what that is and give you the motivation, the discipline, and the vistas, and the goals and the accomplishments, kind of in that Saturn mindset. It also can be catalyzed from kind of crisis. Challenges is probably a better word. Crisis is more Pluto, but when you got Pluto and Saturn together. Okay, so all this is a cosmic liberator, but in the form of becoming or better if you so choose to become the best version of you, the deconditioned you, you'll be shown how to do it. Now it's just a matter of doing it. Now Saturn is going station here. So they were getting a lot closer, Saturn and Neptune. But they're basically going to be hand in hand for a long time. They're going to be retreating both in retrograde back into Pisces, and then by 20th of February, or February of 2026, they will be direct and going in at 0 Aries, not even the first degree yet, and they'll be perfectly conjunct. So there's your life cycle of this mini grand trine, with the point of it on Saturn, and Saturn is station. All right. Not much to show here. Just Moon is past the Pluto now, but we still have a very strong Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, Pluto. So all the further out planets are in a mini grand trine. Sunday. This is the closest that Saturn and Neptune will be until the 20th of February. 20th of February 2026, when they go perfectly conjunct. Okay. Monday, got a temporary T-square with the moon and the north node with T-square on Venus in Gemini. So it's a temporary, but it can be a little more difficult for relationships or a little more trials, if you will. There's no longer a Uranus and Venus conjunction. So we have the mini grand trine and a temporary T-square on Venus. So some challenges financially, some challenges or some pressures inside the relationship on this day. Tuesday the 15th. Now we'll be talking about this in the next, probably the next CIRF report, is the Venus square Mars. But in other news, Saturn is now fully retrograde. So Saturn and Neptune about 13 minutes in between each other. So very, very, very close. And so you put those archetypes together, you meld them together, that's what they are. They're together. And then they're also parallel. So this is very intense, but remember, they're further out planets. So will you see it? It'll be showing you the ideal form of self. And it'll show you the Saturn part, the self-discipline it will take to get there. Now you have to just choose it. All right, Wednesday, 16th. Everything pretty much the same. All right, here's the I-Ching. Says 54, no change lines. So we're going to probably experience a state of emotional restraint mixed with deep feeling. There's a sense of holding back one's true emotions or expressions of love, often out of wisdom or necessity rather than fear. It does sound like a Capricorn-esque take on emotions. We'll feel a tender protectiveness both towards others and towards our own hearts. It's like having strong feelings but choosing to express them gently and thoughtfully. This can create a bittersweet emotional experience where love exists alongside restraint. It does speak to that T-square on Venus as well. So let's button this up. All right. And before we get into the solution, let's summarize what we just talked about. Not a lot going on in the astrology other than a big full moon in Capricorn and then our mini grand trine and Saturn going station retrograde. The Cancer Capricorn continuum unlocks to initiate this transformative week as an extension of the last CIRF week. Last CIRF week, if you remember, was just all about change and transformation. This energy continues because of that strengthening mini grand trine and Saturn station. Full moon in Capricorn stands majestically in the sky as its regal domain, untethered to other planetary influences. In other words, no other strong lines to the full moon, so we can just have the full moon. And it is big and bold, but it's more authentic. It's more authentic to just a pure full moon in Capricorn. This is the catalyst of valuable intentions and releasing the fears that have held you back. In the backdrop, the seasons of change are upon us in full rebellious force. A mini grand trine with outer planets creates an undeniable undertow of transformation and change. This combination of seeking your highest practical position mixed with an entire changing ecosphere creates the I-Ching 54 reading, being careful and protecting self with caution. Sort of makes sense with that full moon in Capricorn and just the nature of Capricorn and how naturally they can be sort of timid on things. All right, so before we get to the solution, we didn't have any change lines in the I-Ching, so we get 54 as well down here. And for the first time ever, I think, in CIRF history, and that's important, We also have Rave Mandala 54. So freaking cool. So we have 54 up in the influence. We have 54 in the solution, and we have 54 in the rave. So hexagram 54 is it. And so before we read that, let's see what we have here. Here's the solution. So now we're looking for behaviors in hexagram 54. It says, act with deliberate emotional restraint even when their feelings run deep. They choose words carefully in intimate conversations. Engage in small, thoughtful gestures rather than grand, romantic displays. Tend to be patient with developing relationships, allowing things to unfold naturally rather than pushing for commitments or clarity. I would imagine that given the full moon in Capricorn, but also mixed with that later T-square on Venus, that it does bring an element of emotional anxiety. Am I doing it right? Am I doing the things that are in my best interest? It's kind of those questions for Capricorn. But we got to convert it. And we convert it from tropical into sidereal. And we do so at the full moon. And so we get hexagram 54. There's 54 again in sidereal Sagittarius. Let's look in 54 in terms of the rave. What's the difference between the rave mandala and the I-Ching? Well, the rave mandala is human design, and it uses the 64 hexagrams in order to expand upon the gates and lines of the body graph in human design. So what that means is it's going to be remarkably the same, but in its lines, you're going to see some extra data that are specific to human behavior. And 54 is about the marrying maiden or the careful affection. It's called both of those, and it's to transform. The goal of 54 as a whole, all these 6 lines, is to transform individual ambition into something that serves the collective through appropriate relationships and interactions. It's in the root center, 54 is. And we have, I think, 9 chakras in the human design system, and each chakra has gates within them that go to the other chakras. So that's how energy is moved around the human body chart, body graph. And on line 4, this is where the full moon will be. So the full moon unlocks what's called enlightenment in darkenment. Here, in the most mystical of positions, there is neither an exaltation nor a detriment, for in truth they are the same. And both of them say the Alpha and Omega, the end and the beginning. There is no description possible. Each planet will manifest this energy equally, with absolutely no guarantee that its effects will ever be perceived. However, the potential is always there, the fuel for transformation at its purest level. No polarity, no specific planetary accent. So, well, we know from this full moon as it lights up and activates this gate line in the human design chart, it means for all of us are going to be affected by this, but it gives us basically a gateway to this higher level of enlightenment and darkenment. So transformation gives you the insights. It gives fuel. Now, it doesn't do the transformation for you. Like I said before, it says the fuel for transformation at its purest level. So you have to see that it's there. You have to be aware of it. And then if you're aware of it, then you can use it if you so choose to transform, but in towards no polarity. So staying out of dualistic thinking, that's the gift here, is to get to higher levels of mindset, higher levels of spiritual attunement. For what end? Well, that's for you to decide based on your values, your highest values. But the potentials of this line is to access profound spiritual insights, ability to see beyond polarities. the capacity to embrace the wholeness of experience. In other words, like for example, take an insight about how your life could be better. And for any reason, it could be relationships, could be your career, could be in self-care, like hobbies, could be anything. And how the human language in duality will say, yeah, I need to do that because I want to be better. Well, there's an offshoot. So if you get better at this thing, that means there'll be a different continuum that unlocks, or different degrees. And if you swing to the opposite side, you're going to have opposite type problems. But if you don't sink into duality, one or the other, good or bad, right or wrong, black or white, and see that everything has an opposite end, a polarity. So you can see that everything is on a continuum. And that's this gift of this line, so that you don't fall into the trap of I can be perfect, or I can do this thing to be better, but also know that it comes at a cost, because everything is on a continuum, including this improvement. It might make you better in this regard, but it too will have a impact elsewhere in your life. That's just the nature of higher level or no polarity thinking. All right, so how do we balance this, especially when it becomes active? It means that we should probably practice meditation, focusing on the non-dual awareness. There's no good without the bad. There's no right without the wrong. There's no curse without the gift. There's no gift without the curse. The good and the bad are together, yin and yang together. Study mystical traditions that emphasize unity consciousness. Just study these paradoxes in your life. Okay? That's all we ask. This is the opportunity to gateway to the higher realms of understanding life itself. Develop comfort for the unknown and the mysterious. And because the increment is the same as the decrement, it's the same thing, here's some other ideas. You can accept that not all spiritual experiences need to be perceived or understood. You can allow transformative processes to unfold without controlling them. How many of us accidentally, because that little tinge of fear of losing control, then we end up controlling. Whether or not we know it or not, that's a different story. But we humans love to try to control when that feeling of lack of control is there. So can we tune into the lack of control and then learn to be possibly okay with it, or not okay with it, but being instructed from that? Do I need to fix this by controlling, or can I get my need met in a different way without creating other problems? Find balance between mystical awareness and practical engagement, and develop patience with spiritual growth. Processes that may be imperceptible. All right, there's a very difficult line to talk about, but it is a gateway to higher living. Okay. All right, let's summarize. We had the careful affection of 54, and we also had the rave mandala of the marrying maiden, careful affection, both the same there. But look at this. We have waxing gibbous moon, which is not really, you can be careful, but the waxing gibbous moon to a full moon is highly unpredictable and very motivating. And so is Sagittarius, is a fire sign, and so it wants to freely go. It doesn't want to be held back. It doesn't want to really be careful. It would rather be impulsive rather than being careful. So we have two carefuls, and we have two non-yielding things. And so that makes it interesting. It kind of goes back to this rave reading where it's enlightenment and darkenment. So let's see what we have. First time ever in CIRF history that the I-Ching is equal to the rave mandala. That's crazy. But that's interesting. And it's based on a full moon activation of that line. So that's even more important. It's a big deal. Never before seen dichotomy in the triangulation. We have double yielding with these two, and we have meshed with double unyielding down here. We have the alpha and the omega, polarity-less rave reading. Seize the day, but vector your arrows towards your highest values. So it's going to be both. It needs to be both careful, but also opportunistic. Okay? If you really want to maximize the potential here, then you would spend a little time just to be careful, but not procrastination, not holding back. It needs to shoot its arrow, but before you shoot it, don't shoot it impulsively. At least give it some thought. Now, how do you make sure that just before you release that arrow, your last filter, your last check to see whether or not this is the arrow I want to shoot, and that's the direction I want to shoot it, you ask yourself, is this arrow going towards my highest values? If the answer is yes, go ahead. Gateway to breakthrough. Open the door of your choosing, but immediately pause and briefly see whether that life is correlated with your true life purpose. And not just some temporary high or hopium, right? Open some doors or open a door, but before you just go running into the room like a Sagittarius would, you stop and you look to see if this was the right door. The only known that we know for this week is you must choose it. I'm going to hammer that one home. Just because we have some really beneficial alignments with the mini grand trine towards ideal self, collective liberation, massive transformation, massive positive changes are possible. Incredible changes. Still, they're not going to be done without your will. So you must choose it. You must see the energy. You must wait for it to appear. Take that back. If you wait for it to appear, nothing arrives. Conceive it, manifest it, be the creator. That's the gift of all these energies. And that's the gift of this triangulation. It's really unusual triangulation. It is a gateway. I believe it's going to be kind of like an energetic portal as an opportunity, and focus on non-duality thinking, non-polarity thinking, seeing that pretty much everything has two different opposite sides. So the better you can see that continuum and everything, the better. And it shouldn't be restrictive. It shouldn't keep you back. I can see how, having learned that for, many more years ago, that the non-polarity thinking and the continuum was a revolution in my mental aptitude, and it was hard, and it took effort, and because it took effort, it made me kind of procrastinate to think through everything. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, for example, and now with non-polarity thinking, I can see that there's an offset, a yin and yang. If I do this over here, then this effect comes up too. So good and bad is limited. It just is. All right, social layout. There's on the top here, these are definitely lower end social, but these two down here are, as you expected, definitely upper kind of increased social. So 50-50, and that makes sense as well. All right, everybody, I appreciate you being here. Have a great full moon, and we'll see you on Wednesday for a Dreambot. So put your comments below, and we will share the winner then. Thank you, everybody. Namaste. Take care.